I'm president of our D1 cross country executive committee for Coach Association. So
Literally caring about it that much more, and that's what separates who's the best and then who's, subpar, right?
last year, we had the biggest university meet in Louisiana. The NCAA is the best development system in the world for athletics talent. How many times can you produce the fastest person ever or the furthest jumper ever? And there's a couple coaches in the country that the other team's just not invited to their place.
I had to finish the race, basically running with a twisted ankle.
Baseball or basketball, you're just excited about whoever's winning. It's not that it had to be the best basketball game in the history of the universe. Have you heard of the 75 hard challenge?
If you're not healthy and you don't like the way you look and you don't love your body, then it's almost like how are you supposed to love and everything else that you're doing, and how are you supposed to take care of everything else that you want to do in life?
Michael Phelps, there's stories of his coach smashing his goggles and then being like, go have fun during this set.
Taylor about to stick flex.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Wolf Den. We are here today with Miss Stefanie Slekis, the head track and field coach at softball. The head track and field coach at Nicholls State University. Said softball because we were just talking about softball. I got the bat right in front of me.
Exactly. Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, well, we're excited to have you. So let's go ahead and take it from the beginning. Where did you start off? Did you start off playing college sports? Did you start off playing high school? You started from a young childhood. Where did it come from?
Yeah, well, I became a runner probably in middle school. I was actually homeschooled through 8th grade. So my dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, grew up outside D.C. because he worked at the Pentagon, a bunch of other places, and he had to stay in shape for his PT test. And so my mom and I started running with him when I was in middle school. And then field hockey is really big in the East Coast. And so I wanted to play field hockey because all the girls at my church were doing it.
Like field hockey, that's like
the sport with the stick, right?
Like lacrosse?
Yeah, no, field hockey, lacrosse is up, right? Field hockey, you're down with the wooden stick and
Okay.
it's a hard ball, but it's on the ground.
Right. I didn't even know that was a thing.
No, it's a big thing in the Northeast,
Okay.
and I couldn't make field hockey camp because I already had plans that summer to go visit my childhood best friend. Lived in Flower Mound, Texas, so we'd spend time flying back and forth. Her dad had been in the Air Force, then he flew for Southwest. So anyways, I was busy, couldn't go to the camp, and my mom said, well, why not try running? I swam, growing up, which is an endurance sport. Also, they have sprinters too. But,
Right.
She thought, hey, maybe you should try that. And so I went to a meeting that my high school, Forest Park High School, had probably in May, I guess, with Coach Dave Davis, who's now in the Hall of Fame in Virginia. So great high school coach. We still stay in touch. And I met him. I met my then, teammate that she'd gone on to run for Arkansas and went on to nationals out of high school. She was very impressive, Beth Fahey. And I met her that day, met him. She lived a mile from my house, and they gave me a running plan for the summer. And I came in as a freshman, made varsity, and ended up 16th at the state meet at the big school division in Virginia my freshman year, which was just off of All-State. And I think that was
That's actually awesome.
that was it. I was going to be a distance runner. I admired another girl, Sarah Bowman, now Sarah Brown, that high jumped and ran fast in AA. And I asked Coach Davis once, could I high jump? And he had me jump my vertical in the hallway and said, absolutely not. You're going to run the mile, 2 mile. And so yeah, I was just a distance runner from the beginning. But I did ballet through junior of high school, still with it. And then I still continued to swim when I had an injury or something like that.
Right. I guess, swimming, you can't really go wrong with it. That kind of you don't really put no strain on your body, but then it's also activating all parts of your muscle.
It's the best cross training you can do, right? For me now, I struggle to get myself to get in the pool. I don't like smelling like chlorine all day.
I know. It's just me too. Even at the wellness center, whenever I work out over there, I never utilize the pool. It's just I don't know. It's just one of those things. Other people being in it, and then it's just also like you said, the chlorine aspect, and I don't know. And then also I'm not a very strong swimmer. And I'm from Pierpont, so that's a very weird thing to not be, I grew up in a swamp, so I should know how to be able to swim pretty well. But, I had some close calls before where I'm just strong waves or something like that in the ocean. I'm just struggling.
No, I love swimming in the ocean, but I don't get people that can swim in the bayou. But obviously, I'm not from here. But I'm there's literal gators. I'll kayak the bayou, but I'm not swimming in the bayou.
That's the last thing we're scared of. Actually, right here, I have a score. I don't know if you can kind of see it. You could probably see it better with the lights. But they had it was a 4-footer, and we were catching them while we were frogging and stuff with our bare hands. And alligator clinched onto me. I had to punch him off, and then ended up having to go to the hospital that morning just make sure I had no bacteria or nothing from the alligator's mouth or anything like that. So, I mean, the last thing we worried about is gators. They're more scared of us than we are of them. I'll put it to you like
Yeah.
that.
We like feeding the gator outside Rotola's, my kids and I, but
Yeah,
we stick to that.
I actually see that. I see that gator sometimes.
Yeah.
But so no, going back to the track and field. So you basically was moving around a lot whenever you were younger.
So we actually didn't, which is kind of crazy. When your dad's in the military, you normally think you move. But my parents are both from Boston. I was born in Pennsylvania because my dad was working at Princeton at the time for the ROTC program. And then he made the move to the Pentagon, and they just moved him around there, you know. So we got to stay there and grow up, my sister and I, in the same house all the way up through high school, which is different, right? You definitely had friends that came and went. And then we had other friends that worked for like the government and stuff. So they stayed, right?
Y'all might have got some strong connections.
No. I've had friends who are like, is your dad a spy? I'm like, no, my dad just was a lieutenant colonel in the Army.
Well,
but
I mean, if something goes down, you know, you might, hey, where's the safe house at?
yeah. No, I did. I guess my coolest claim to fame is my dad, when he worked at the Pentagon, would bring my sister and I into work sometimes on the weekend. And I did roller skate in the like basement floors of the Pentagon. I still remember like the linoleum floor and like,
That's actually
I don't know if I
cool.
get in trouble for that. It's sad. But we did do that. That was kind of cool. Cool childhood memory of doing that.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
And I think about that for like my kids now, like Polly's 8, Sandy's 5, right? And like just how neat it is to grow up around college athletics, right? And so, you know, you see that with, you know, some basketball coaches, like their sons or daughters getting to be at games. And, you know, I know our baseball coach, Brent Herring, does that with his boys. And just like getting to grow up around college athletics is so cool.
So are you doing that too, kind of like with your kids? Are you having them involved, like whenever y'all go and do meets and stuff? Like, are they out there in the field giving out water or helping out? Are they?
Yeah, so like my babysitting core group is all athletes, or one of the cheerleaders. She Madison does it for me too, but they're at, you know, college sports right now. For our practices, I try to like limit how much they're there, because like you can only do your job so well when your kids are also there, right? But we joke that my assistants are there, and like, you know, they'll call out splits, and we had a few morning practices with like our 5K, 10K group this spring that the girls came with me before school, and they would just like randomly start running laps because they were bored. And so they're out there running, trying to keep up with some of the girls on my team, which is pretty cool.
No, that's actually really cool, because it's just like, at the end of the day, whenever you start that young, and like that's gonna give them that drive, you know, that like, because almost it's like they look up to these girls, like, you know, they do. They probably look at them and they think they're like famous or something. So whenever they get to do that now, whenever at this young age, they're probably like, well, this is what I want to do whenever I'm older, right?
Yeah, my younger one, Sandy, says she's going to be a runner and a coach like mom. And so, and Polly is not sure, but she just started the last year. So she's like, maybe I do want to be a runner. And I think the cutest thing was we were watching the selection show for national cross country in the fall, because I vote in the nationals coaches poll, because I'm president of our D1 cross country executive committee for Coach Association. So I vote in the poll, and we were watching the selection show, and the girls asked me, you know, was Nicholls going? I was like, no, like it's only 31 teams, and there's like, you know, 300 plus teams in the country. It's one of the hardest team national championships to make, right? And Polly, who had never told me she'd be a runner, looked over and said, Mom, like, Nicholls will go when I run for you. And so I thought that was really cool that she had that much self-confidence. Like, she thinks she's going to be the difference. Like, we're going to go.
Well, no, that's what you need to have, though.
No, and I just think that's so cool. And whether she ends up being that great or not, like, I think for me, the thing is that the girls do things they love. Right now, we play soccer, we do cheer, right? Like, just, you know, they love going to Nicholls cheer camp. Our baseball players have been awesome. Like, I share an office building with our admin staff, and then Coach Herring in baseball, and just moving to that building, my halfway point at Nicholls. You know, I was in the old gym in Shaver, and then we switched when football got their new building at Buckfault, and just growing up around baseball was really fun. That like the guys on our team, all of them have just been so cool, you know. And and Jaden Clara is a guy that played for 3 years, I think, or 4 years at Nicholls, and him, you know, seeing my girls grow up, and he was just so sweet to them this year, especially because Sandy was really sad that, you know, big man had graduated. Edgar Alvarez, the first baseman.
Well, that's crazy, because like you're actually the second person to tell us that, where they have just like this special kid on the team, specifically the baseball team, that kind of picked up that role of like big brother figure to these kids, right? So that's actually kind of, is that what I'm
No,
hearing?
and I mean, when Coach Silva got here, he was here for 3 years, right? And now, you know, Brent, his boys are awesome, and his family and their staff's great too. But that was when I moved into that office. And so, you know, Mike and those guys and I became friends with their wives. And so for us, we went to the tournament for the first time ever to go watch baseball. And, you know, we didn't win that year. I think Coach Silva got ejected, and my older daughter loved Coach Silva and was like, wanted to talk to him as he was walking up the hill. And I was like, no, girl, like, don't talk to Coach Silva. But no, definitely, those guys have been, you know, we see them all the time. If I come by Barker, they're going to be coming in and out, and they're always friendly to my kids and stuff.
That's awesome. No, That's great to have. With that being said, so you're pretty much over the entire track and field association. Like you're the main person, like the main coach, right?
So for the Coach Association, I'm president of D1 cross country. So Carol Smith Gilbert from Georgia, she's president of like the whole association. And
Okay.
so then she's on the board of directors, right? So then all of the other presidents sit on the board of directors with her and a few other people that are on the board. And so there's like a committee for D1 track and field, there's a committee for D1 cross country, and then there's like D2, D3, right? Same thing. So I like to think if you think like the university, like Carol would be like Dr. Clune and I would be like JT, like one of the VPs, right?
Right.
So that's kind of how this setup is. But, yeah, I'll lead it. This is my first convention where I'll lead all the discussions in December. So I'll stand up in front of all the cross country coaches and go through all of our board meetings and, like all those notes and like what's happening with our sport and any proposals that our association has and that kind of stuff.
No, that's actually really cool. I didn't realize how like deep and how many different like associations and like just boards and stuff that he had involved with all of this. It really shows you like how in depth these programs are. And so I know like you were bringing up some stuff earlier, talking about how some of these programs, they have so much going on, and then if something's not going right for them, if they might be losing or something, or whatever the case, if the college might want to drop it for some reason. Can you like touch base on that, like, and let us know what's kind of going on with that?
Yeah, I think with like the house settlements, like a huge, topic we've been talking about for, the last year. And I think, college sports just in an interesting era. I say interesting because I think some people think it's great. And then some people are going, is this what we want? Right. And so I wore my I Support Higher Ed shirt because I remember buying this to go up to the Capitol, one of my first years at Nicholls, and just like talking about like, I love that we have the opportunity to compete in athletics in higher education, right? So I think if you go on the academic side of it, you go way back and say like, why were sports added to the college setting, right? And so you think about like the Ivy League and like, they're not giving out athletic scholarships, right? So those athletes are doing it like, why? Why are we doing it? And it's like, I firmly believe, and I tell our recruits, like, we think it helps you grow as an adult human, right? Like, so the time of being in college, like, that's a growth period, right? Some people that don't go to college, maybe they're growing in the military, or they're growing because they start out apprenticing at a certain company, and like that's that growth period that we all kind of need when we leave our parents or that our guardians, that setup we have at home, and we become adults, and that's not an overnight process, right? And so we talk about that we're raising adults, and I think that being on a team is so important to that. I think representing something bigger than yourself. So we talk about, JT doesn't say servant leadership all the time, our athletic director, but I see that in him. And so I started labeling it like, we have an athletic director that's a servant leader. And I strive to be a servant leader. That's my goal, right? That means that, have I cleaned the bathroom on a Sunday at the baseball stadium? Yes, because I know where the extra supplies are. And I know like, hey, someone's got to do these things sometimes to like, make our place great,
Yeah,
right?
no, and it's literally caring about it that much more, and that's what separates who's the best and then who's, subpar, right?
Yeah.
That was very, very well said. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that. We actually talked about it with the last coach that was on with Mr. Brent, I believe, and we were just saying how, if you just being a part of a team, and then also like whenever, like from a business standpoint, I would be more likely to hire somebody who came from an athletic position, because you already showed me you done made it through school. On top of that, you handled a career in an athletic program, and you were able to keep up with your grades. You're dedicated to the sport. So that just shows that you have the foundations to be a successful person in life. Right?
Yeah, and so much of our team, like they're working part-time jobs too, right? So like our program at Nicholls for track and field cross country, we have a little bit of scholarship to spread around, but a lot of our athletes are doing it because they just want that opportunity. They want to go to the Southland Championship, which is a great track and field championship. We have some really good programs in our conference. And so, I was on a recruiting call the other day where it's like the guy was just like, I just want that chance to line up with some of the best sprinters in the country, right? Like you're going to get that opportunity, whether you're getting paid for it or not, like you're getting that opportunity. And then I talked about like we serve our community. Like that's one of the purposes of our program is we want to do community service that has a lasting impact. Is one of the things I talk about. We coach a Girls on the Run team. We've for 8 years we volunteered at the Reindeer Run for the fall and for Girls on the Run. And we want to have that impact. And, I love that I'm on a team. I say a team of head coaches, how JT runs our staff. We're all on one team as head coaches. And I love Coach Rybecky, our new head football coach. Like, those guys are at everything. And they show up in their jerseys, which is that cool impact of like, we did a spring fling event at Chack Elementary, and they showed up in their jerseys. And the teacher said, like, man, the fifth graders don't love this event as much as the little kids. And the fact that the football guys were there and playing some games with them, like, it made all the difference to that event. And so it's really cool to see that and to see it across our department. That's the big thing I sell to our athletes is like, we're all in. You hear Justin Payne from women's basketball say that all the time. We're all in. Like, and I think we have a staff, of head coaches that are like that. We have an admin that's like that, and people that love what we're doing. And I think our athletes, we then recruit athletes that like, we love what we're doing. We love that we have the opportunity, and we love that this, the community in Thibodaux embraces us, right?
Absolutely.
And it's amazing.
That's what you want. So with that being said, and I feel like you have all this knowledge, and tell me if this isn't something that you want to touch on right now, but how do you feel about the NIL situations, and is that impacting the sport of track and field and with your players and with people coming to Nicholls per se, or not coming to Nicholls because of maybe an NIL might have affected influenced them some type of way, right? Is that a situation that y'all run into? Is that something that you want to touch base on?
No, I think we can touch on that. And I think that, I'm a real frank person, I say, right? And so the committee I'm on, Sarah Smith from Texas was on the committee this year with me, and we were talking at convention. She was talking about losing recruit because they got offered, NIL money on top of a full. And she's like, man, I hadn't even offered them a full yet, right? And for me, you think of our sport, like University of Texas, like that was one of the places to be, right? And so it's like, but you see coaches at that level with what's their NIL situation look like for their sport? How are each of these programs handling it? And it's different across the country in the sport of, basketball, they're all kind of in the same arms race, right? But then in some of our other sports, it's like, you probably see that big break off in volleyball too. Like some people are going to spend the money, some people aren't, right? And so I think it's going to be really interesting in the next 10 years how it shakes out. Now with the health settlement, who is going to fund those full scholarships for women's track and field, right? We've been at 18 that you can spread out however you want. There's no roster limit versus baseball has had a roster limit, right? They're one of the sports that had like a minimum you had to give, right, of scholarship. But then you could break it up, right? But you had to give at least 25%. You had a roster limit. Well, that's why you see the storylines in baseball of these upsets, right? Men's basketball has less full scholarships than women's basketball. Well, the guys want to play. They have to go play to get a deal afterwards. So you see in men's basketball more upsets because they're moving around to play, right? And
Crazy.
so
I didn't even know that was a thing.
No, and so this has been happening, and that's something back when I was even at North Texas. I remember telling the football coach and the basketball coach on the way to a booster event, we were chatting, and like, I said, imagine you're bringing a kid on a visit and you're offering them books. Like, that's my sport, right? And like, do you know how many kids do you need to bring in and offer books to, like, to fit that role that you're looking to fill on your team versus, hey, recruiting for, football at the SBS level or basketball, it's head count. You're just offering a full, right? So you're just playing, do they like my place best? Is this the best setup for them? And so there's so many layers to recruiting, and I think I've gone on quite the tangent, which is normal for me. But back to NIL, I think it's like, how are we choosing to spend our money? And I think as a coaches group, our last executive call, we were discussing like, what's the value you're bringing your department, right? And that's something that we spent time as a coach association, like, what are some changes or things that we can all do together and show our value as a sport, right? And
so y'all have some type of control over that?
No, it's more just like encouraging, or like if you make rules, right? And so I think some things we talk about is like, well, do we need to make a rule, or do we think it's better that we're just like encouraging as a group, right?
Right.
And so Pat Henry, he's a longtime famous head coach he was at LSU originally, and now he's at Texas A&M, been there forever. They just co-won another men's national championship in track and field, and he's someone that I'm lucky he spends time talking to me. I love Coach Henry. He's met my daughters at meets, and like he's just an amazing, kind of godfather in our sport, right? And he has some ideas of what we need to change. And obviously there's things that some of us see, okay, maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't. There's this like dynamic that's interesting in our sport. But anyways, I'm kind of on a tangent. But one of the things he pushed for cross country, which he's the track and field guy, right? Mm-hmm. But they have a beautiful cross country course they built at Texas A&M. They spent millions of dollars building a cross country course. They host our regional meet sometimes for the South Central. But he said, why are we not tracking attendance at our meets? Why are we not charging admissions at our meets? I talked about my daughter's play, cheer, Bantam football. I was paying $5 to go to a Bantam football game. And then I realized, like, we're not paying $5 to go to one of the, like, they hosted the third biggest meet in the country at the Arturo Barrios Invitational that our team, Nicholls, went and competed at last year. And they didn't charge to get in to watch. And I mean, this is a spectacle. When you talk about like the women's race had almost 400 women in it. It's insane. You know, Parker Valby had been there the year before, who had won a national title, right? So you're talking about like the who's who of women's sports or the men's side. Like they're there, right? You're watching that level of talent in our sport, and we're not charging admission. And so they finally tracked attendance, but their goal is to charge. And Coach Henry had put in like a proposal, and us as executive committee looked at it and said, well, there's not a way we can really like enforce this, but we want to encourage it, right? And so that was the thing that like our whole region, the South Central, we agreed that like Coach Henry's in our region, obviously, right? Like us as a group, every home meet that we host, we're all going to track attendance at a minimum, and then we're going to charge if we can charge. So this year will be the first time we're going to charge spectators for the Nicholls Cross Country Invitational. We're going to charge $5, right?
Nothing.
No, and our goal has been to put on a festival, right? And so that's something that I then looked at. Well, if I'm going to charge $5, how else do I make this a great festival environment? And so we have a great relationship with biology. Those guys are all in the Cajun Music Preservation Society. So we're going to have live Cajun music this year.
Awesome.
So come out, listen to some live Cajun music at the farm, Saturday, September 27th. There's my plug.
There you go, y'all guys.
September 27th,
Or
be at the
Run
Nicholls
Run.
Farm. But that's what it's about. It's like, and we're going to create a festival environment. You're going to come out. There's a community race. There's a kids free 1K to do. There's our university meets, which last year we had the biggest university meet in Louisiana. And Alabama came, right? So it was
crazy.
cool. Roll Tide, right?
Yeah, I know, but it's just crazy. Like, especially whenever you're competing. Like, I mean, you know, the other main college we're competing with is LSU. So it's just like to hear we had the biggest one. That's kind of just crazy.
Yeah, well, their meet, the hurricane affected it, right? That's South
so that was
Louisiana.
why. Okay.
They also going to host a relay meet. I think our opener meet, the Battle for New Orleans, it used to be just New Orleans meet, but now Tulane and them co-host the Battle for New Orleans, and it's a pretty large opener. It's going to be like 11 or 12 teams, and we just beat them out. We had like 14, 15 teams, right? I think they might have had more Division I at the opener than at our meet, but when you looked at the size of how many university teams ran in a meet, that was our big thing, right? And Alabama brought their B+ team, right? So the guys that we had 5 of their guys, I think, break our course record, which was a pretty impressive course record. Griffin Neal from Incarnate Word had set it a couple years ago, and he's one of the best guys ever in our conference, right? But those guys ran on their conference team, right? But then their national team, in our so that's another weird thing about our sport. Like, we don't race every weekend.
Right.
And then you're talking about the same athletes, you know, so we mentioned like Parker Valby from Florida, right? She won a national title 2 years ago. She set the 10K record last year on the track, and now this year, 5 women broke that record on the track and field championship. But she's not racing every weekend. She's got to go from, you know, cross country season all the way through indoor to outdoor. And if she's going to race at the world level, a girl like that's running from
And you
August to like June, July, right?
And then whenever you say the world level, are you meaning like basically like training for the Olympics?
Yeah, so like the top end of our sport, when you look at the college athletes, like they're making, you know, so Bryce Hoppel's a guy that's become one of the best 800-meter runners in the country for the U.S., and he went to Kansas. You know, the year he made his first world team and raced in August in the 800, he'd run Big 12's cross country that year, 10 months before that. So his year had started running a cross country season at Kansas and went all the way to August at a world championship. Racing the 800 versus at Conference Cross, he was running 8K, which if you don't know the running world, like that's a huge difference of what event you're training for. And so our sports, right, we call it one sport, but our sports are so different and there's so much variance. And I think that's where, we are seeing NIL at some places, but then other places we're not. We're seeing people paying for recruiting services. That's a big debate in our sport right now where people are paying $20,000, $30,000. Some people paid $60,000 just to have dibs on some pretty good kids from other countries.
That's crazy.
And so it's like, how are you spending your money, right? And so I think that's what I look at more like when we talk about higher ed, like at the end of the day, these are academic institutions. And what's the value you're bringing, I get it, but it's also like we got to go back to who we are supposed to be, I think, to begin with.
Well, then also, too, just my take on that is why are we not investing that money back into kids from where we are? You know what I mean? Dude, there's so much talent in America already. Why are we even having to go and source international students? Is that more of like a diversity thing? And like that we need to have that diversity? And I'm not saying we don't want international students or anything. I'm not saying anything like that, right? All I'm saying is to pay that type of money, is the payoff really like, I don't know, like I feel like that should be routed like instead of paying 60, I get maybe paying 5 or 10 maybe or something, to go out there and talk with the people, right, and try to get your foot in the door. But like 60,000, so it's a for sure thing. Whatever, they could have put all that money into something else that would have been beneficial for everyone.
And those are the rumor numbers we talk about, right? And I think that one of the things though, so that's where like our coach association comes in, where we talk as coaches, like what's best for our sport, right? And I think that's what I always try to remember. Like I'm supposed to be representing, I got elected because I wanted to represent our group, right? And so sometimes it's not what I think, it's like what our group really thinks is best for our sport. And I think that's one of the tricky things for track and field is, athletics to the rest of the world, right? We are pure athleticism, and the NCAA is the best development system in the world for athletics talent, right? And so when you look at the Olympics, I think one of the neat things when you watch the coverage now, they'll point out at the Olympics, like how many of those athletes were NCAA athletes. Yeah. So that's awesome for our sport, I think. And that's one of the things, like the pro side of our sport, isn't great in the U.S., right?
That's why that was one of the questions I was going to ask you too. Is there like a pro level of track and field, or is it like college and then Olympic
So
level?
they're trying to. So there was Grand Slam track was just launched this year, and that was, Michael Johnson. That's a famous name in the track and field world, right? Do you know who I'm talking about, right? The sprinter that wore the gold spikes.
I'm not big into the track and field. I ran cross country whenever I was younger, like in like the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then my sister Brooke was big into it. So like I know some of the events that you're talking about, where it's just like all of these. We didn't pay. I remember we never paid for any of the events that we went to. We just showed up and went watch 1,000 girls running from all the different high schools around.
Yeah.
And so it was crazy. And it was on like they were only running like 3 miles or something like that at a time. Oh, is that what y'all run, or y'all run more?
So Louisiana runs 3 miles for high school, and they do charge at the state meet. They charge $14 to go watch the state meet. So that's when I was like, I think we can charge $5. But no, Grand Slam track was this vision of like, how do we make a package that's the same length as, you guys did a podcast on like banana ball, right? Or like other sporting events is like kind of that 2-hour package. And so then they looked at setting up like, people were in certain like ranges of their events. So like, okay, Sydney McLaughlin, the famous 40-meter hurdler, she's going to come down and run an open 100, right? Like, so go out of your wheelhouse, right?
Your comfort zone.
Where's her range go to, and kind of setting up those exciting matchups you don't normally see, which brings intrigue. Because so much of our sport is just like, did they set the world record or not? And it's like, well, how many times can you produce the fastest person ever or the furthest jumper ever? And, one of our shot putters, I'm going to forget which one it is, that's multi-time Olympian for the U.S. I saw a clip where he talked about like, have an event where we have you go throw the shot put.
Like a normal, like an average person.
Yes. And then the concept of like, oh my word, when you think about then how far those guys are throwing this, like, I think it's like a 14 or 16 pound ball.
I've been saying that. I always said that they should have one person in every single event at the Olympics that's just your regular average guy. Like that shit. And then like, not your regular average, but like obviously like your average guy, but has a little bit of athletic ability that think that they can maybe compete, right? And then have them go against.
And you're showing like how athletic these human beings are. Like it's crazy. Like there's no comparison. I think the average Joe example, like you kind of say like it sounds gimmicky, but like you almost like need to see it, right? And
I seen things, and like it's just like even from like besides like the track and field world, like we have another guy that works with us and stuff, Duncan, and he like does amateur fighting and stuff. So it's just like whenever you step in a ring with somebody, like an average Joe, and then somebody who's been training and been working for that, they play around with you like you a rag doll. So I know it's the exact same thing in y'all world. You have these people that think they can compete, and they're just like, dude, like you're not even gonna probably touch the dust on us. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And so I think that it's like our pro side of the sport kind of has a similar problem that our college side has, where it's like we can't go play 40, 50 games like you see other sports do. Like if you're setting up a periodization or like training to peak for a certain meet and run like your absolute best or like jump your furthest, like you have to set up this training plan a certain way. Like that's just the nature of our sports. And so then I was talking to one of my coaching friends about advice on like our team's training. He's like, well, you're racing too much. I'm like, I'm racing every other weekend. Like when you think about compared to other sport, like that's not very much racing. Right. But at the high level in our sport across country, like some programs are only racing like the end of September, the middle of October is a huge weekend in our sport. That's when you see pre-nationals. There's this big meet in Wisconsin. That's like how you get your at-large points for nationals. That's a whole other complicated thing. Then you see the conference meet 2 weeks later, the regional meet 2 weeks later, and the nationals is 8 days later.
But what is the reason? Is like one of the reasons that y'all so spread apart is because like the energy and the fatigue it takes out of you to run like
Yeah.
those long distances.
And so then the wild thing is like our current system, the men go to 10K for the regional meets. There's 9 regions in the country for Division 1.
And not everybody is going to know what 10K is. So can you tell them in
Oh,
miles?
so it's 6.2 miles.
Thank you.
10 kilometers, 6.2 miles, right? So the Crescent City Classic is a famous 10K in Louisiana. They're racing that on grass, right?
Really?
And so what's crazy is you run 8K, which is almost 5 miles for the men for the majority of the season. And then, the conference meets are all 8K. And then you'll get to the regional meet 2 weeks later and you're racing your first 10K. And then 8 days later, you turn around and run the national meet, which that's also crazy that you're doing, like, rule of thumb, you're never supposed to do 10Ks that close together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting that we talk about that and, like, making changes in our sports. Like, well, we've had proposals where it's like, let's widen that gap of those days. And then, like, we don't pass it as a coach association because we're afraid of the trickle down. And I own it. I say, like, I'm one of those people that then I stand up at convention. I'm like, so what is the reasoning behind this? Because then when you're, as a coaches group, looking at making changes, you're always thinking someone's doing it for their best interest, right? So you hear a proposal and you're like, well, how does this benefit them, right? And so, and I'm sure all the other coach associations are the same way when you talk about rules changing in their sport. But some people, have made smart changes. Sam Seams, the president of our coach association, always points out women's volleyball made some clear changes to how their sport was played that made the game faster, made it more interesting, made it a better package. And so he's challenged us as a coaching group to kind of keep thinking about that. We have a big proposal our executive committee's been working on for changing how our region system would work in cross country. And it's all encompassing where it's like it addresses all these trickle down things that are normally the reason things don't pass. And so it's like, well, let's make something where if we were to change it, here's the whole layout, right? And now still there's gonna be a change in regular season schedules, but we're also one of those sports where our athletic directors aren't making our schedule.
Right.
And so it's it's interesting when you talk about the difference that it's like, well, you don't have the guaranteed opportunity. So with our current setup, like getting at-large points is a big deal, and the people hosting the meet can tell you you're not coming, right? And so you can miss out on the national championship because you didn't get into the right field to go get points.
That's kind of crazy.
Right? And so it's like there's this interesting dynamic in our sport where like coaches are setting the schedule and you control who can come to your meet. So there's a couple coaches in the country that the other team's just not invited to their place. I won't call anyone out, but like there's an interesting dynamic in our sport, and in other sports you don't have that. The athletic director's making that decision.
What was the reasoning for that? Or is it because like that? Like, is some of them times are scared of competition, or they just got like a rivalry?
So sometimes it's a rivalry, and sometimes it's just like I'm not going to give you access to this opportunity. So there's some mid-major coaches that have stood up at our convention and said like, hey, you get too good, you're not getting invited anymore. Yeah. And so it's just. There's just an interesting dynamic when you're talking about a sport that's chasing qualifying marks. So we have that set up in track and field where, indoor nationals is the hardest national championship of any sport to make. It's like 2%, 2 to 3% of D1 athletes will make the indoor championship because it's just a top 16 list.
I can only imagine how many athletes are competing in that also.
Well, and the track you run on makes a difference. Everyone wants to go to BU for distance races. That's the fastest indoor track in the country. So Boston University having access to that field. Now they're great. They let everybody in. They'll run races all night.
Why is it the fastest track?
It's just the angle it's at, the wood it's made out of. Like it's the fastest place to go run.
Well, speaking on that, that's why I was gonna ask you because actually I have a personal experience. One of the last times I was it was the 8th grade. That's whenever I pretty much like got out of the cross country and running. It was one of my last races. I did the 1 mile first, and then I was going to do the 3 mile after, and I was in the middle of the 3 mile race, and I had like literally like probably like 0.5 left of a mile to go, and I think I was like 6th or 7th place at the time. I was actually all right. I wasn't bad whenever I was running, and we were running on grass, like it was grass and cement, so they had like these buoys or whatever coming out the ground, and I didn't notice. 0.5 a mile away, twisted my ankle, and I had to finish the race like basically like running with a twisted ankle, and I like didn't let it stop me. I ended up coming out 18th in the race. Out of 200 kids, compared to the 6 that I was like actually in. So I was just disappointed. But where I'm going with that is at the college level, do y'all have like different like platform? Like do y'all also run on cement only or like grass? Because like you mentioned that earlier, where they had made a grass only field. So like, is that a thing
So cross country is going to be on grass, right? And then depending on the place you go, if it's crossing over like cart pass, like on a golf course, something like that, most people are going to put something over the cart pass, right?
Also, it's always grass or cross
So
country.
cross country is going to be grass, right? There's some courses that might finish on a track.
Well, you know, that's crazy you say that because like whenever I was running for St. Elizabeth. They had us running on sidewalks that was like the sidewalk was all messed up and whelped up and had all kind of bumps and stuff in it. And I was just like, what are we doing right here? Like, what are we running on?
No, I mean, and there's big debates in cross country about like, okay, like our course at the Nicholls farm isn't the smoothest footing. It's a farm, right? And like we've done what we can to kind of smooth it out. But like, you know, you sometimes get complaints about that. And then you say, well, as a sport, that's where we go back to coaches group. Like we decided to start running on grass tracks basically, right? And then our sport, when you think about like the sport of cross country originating more, when you think how the world runs it, at World Cross, like they'll purposely put mud on the course. They'll dig ditches on the course. Like World Cross Country courses, like I think there was they purposely built this like crazy hill and they're jumping hay bales or logs. Like cross country is supposed to be like, I'm running from point A to point B.
Across the country, right?
I don't know how far I'm going, but the best man or woman wins.
Right.
And it should be rugged. But then I think when you look back at like the demands of our sports that we're trying to go all year, right? Those top end athletes, like you can't have Bryce Hoppel getting injured, right? And then he's trying to make a world 800 meter team, right? So like people have turned into more of these grass tracks where some of them are still more challenging. Like Oklahoma State built a beautiful course that has some challenging hills on it, but still the footing is like immaculate. Right. We have like certain like width requirements for hosting the national championship of like how far you need to have a straightaway before it turns so you can accommodate these large fields and like how wide the course needs to be. But I think that some of it, I always say, like, well, we need to go a little bit back to our roots, right? Like, part of what's exciting, engaging about World Cross is they run it on a 2K loop, and they have these obstacles kind of to it that make it intriguing and exciting. And I think sometimes as a coaches group, it's like we talk about, like, well, who was supposed to be there? Who is supposed to win? And we talk about changing our system. It's like, yeah, but what makes other systems really exciting? We talk about baseball, like, was Wichita State supposed to be there? Right. And so you think about, or like I went up and watched the LSU baseball game with one of my friends that, you know, she went to LSU law school. And I said, hey, you want to go? I was itching to watch some baseball. I'll go up and watch Arkansas. Little Rock was playing LSU. And I'm not from here, right? So I'm kind of secretly rooting for Arkansas Little Rock because I like the upset and LSU was going to win the next day. Anyways, they ended up winning and it was a little awkward because Courtney's like, I think you were cheering your head. I'm like, oh, I think so. But I love the storyline, right? That like, they'd lost, 13 of their 14 last regular season games. They were ranked like 8th in their conference, the Ohio Valley or whatever. They come out, win their conference. They're playing LSU and like lose the first time. And then they beat LSU at home, which is just, those are the exciting storylines of baseball. And now LSU's playing in the national championship game. And so I think as a coach association, that's where I joke that one of my friends keeps saying I keep referencing baseball. But it's like we need some of those storylines. And we see them in basketball too. And so it's like, how do we change our sport and make it more exciting? And then, like I said, we sometimes go back and we're debating something. We're like, oh, but this team wouldn't make it in this scenario now, you know, and they're supposed to be there. And you're like, but are they? Like part of the dynamic of other sports to make the tournaments exciting?
Adaptation.
Is these crazy teams making it, right? And so I think our sport sometimes is missing that because we've become so driven on like just like the best performance ever is the goal. And that's not exciting if that's all we ever talk about, right? And so it's like, how do we just make the race exciting? Like, just someone winning exciting? And in baseball or basketball, you're just excited about whoever's winning. It's not that it had to be the best basketball game in the history of the universe, you know? Like,
well, and I will say, like, throughout the past few years, they do have a few key roles in, like, the track and field programs. I think, like, and maybe that's not considered. That's probably more gymnastics, like LSU gymnastics. That's not really considered track and field, right?
Oh, that's a whole different sport.
That's a whole different sport, right?
Yeah.
I was about to say, like, I've been seeing things, like I mentioned earlier, about the, what was her name? The famous girl, the guy.
Oh, it's Maya, is it Maya Lesnar?
Yeah, Lesnar. It's Lesnar.
Yeah.
I know her name is Lesnar.
Colorado State shot putter, right? There you go.
Yeah.
National champ. There we go.
I'm seeing things like that, so I'm starting to see more of the sport pick up more traction, like at least in my eyes from what I've seen before, because like I don't really see much track and field things whenever I'm on regular ESPN, you know? So
yeah, and having those storylines, you know, like I don't know if you know Noah Lyles, like, you know, fastest U.S. guy right now. Like he's tried really hard, I think, to kind of like, you know, carry that torch for track and field that he saw, you know, Usain Bolt's gone, right? And, you know, the fastest guy in the world, there's got to be something to talk about, right? And so it's like he really kind of owned that role. And then, you know, I think that it's just interesting. You know, we're now living in an age where like, how many social media followers do you have? And like,
Well, that's what I was about to go with it. Is that kind of like,
yeah.
do you like how he's doing it and kind of like going like with the influencer style and like kind of like making these races with these influencers to kind of gain traction on the sport of track and field?
I think you've got to, but then I think there's also some people like with like Grand Slam track kind of start out where it's like, we need to have a league. Like we need to have
Right.
something. And it's something I thought about when we were talking about that. Like the crazy thing with like the professional side of our sport is that like you're better off being connected to a university, right? So Tara Woodhall, who's, you know, long jump Olympic champ, you know, she trains at Arkansas, you know, Hunter Woodhall, her husband, you know, competed at Arkansas. I'm like, that's their home base. Like so many professional athletes in our sport, like their home base has to be connected to a university. Like that's so different than when you think about, you know, baseball, right? Where there's all these minor league teams and they're getting drafted up and like this system is so different. Like, and that's where you talked about before about like bringing in international talent. Like I'm going to probably die on the hill that it's good for our sport. Like we want the NCAA track and field meet to be the best meet in the world. And the NCAA cross country championship is the deepest cross country race in the world. World Cross happens every 2 years. It's a very elite race up front. But when you look at the volume and the depth of talent in the NCAA cross country meet, it's the best cross country race in the world. So that's exciting. It's just more we need to broadcast that better and have people excited about watching it, right?
Right. Well, so then that goes back to play a part in, so like this new thing that they got going on and that they're trying to make it kind of like the professional sport of it and make an actual platform, right? Is there, if they do like a yearly thing, will that not open up more opportunity and more like things for some of these athletes that might have not had time or might have not got the recognition if they make it to that place, and then now you have another platform to get you to the Olympics potentially?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it's like the people that were qualifying for the U.S. Championship and having an opportunity at the Olympics, you know, sometimes, I mean, I think maybe a decade or so ago, I remember one of my friends had done the research where it was like, you know, the 10th best person in their event was making $10,000 a year. Like, you know, that's wild, right? And so, you know, now with NIL, it's like, so some of the schools that are putting forward that money for track and field and cross country, right? Like, you're getting way better support staying in the college system, which we knew all along just from like a sports medicine. Like shout out Thibodeau Regional is amazing for Nicholls, right? And so we talk about the environment like our athletes are going to have just from like the support system. Like, so forget even you're just walking on, right? Just the support system you're going to have academically, athletically. This is the best 4 or 5 years of support system you're going to have, right? Where you're set up to succeed in your sport, right? Yep. And so then some other sports, when you leave professionally, you do have that environment, right? And then track and field and cross country, that's something that's like, it's missing. And you look at the top people, they're normally connected, like I said, to a university, or if they're with a professional group, it's like what access do they have, right? So they're normally partnering up with maybe a sports chiropractor clinic that's going to have all those rehab things, right? John Ball's a famous guy out in Arizona that all the pros go and see, right? When I was at Arizona State for grad school, I didn't realize how lucky I was that I got to go make appointments with him and see him. And then I realized, you know, when I grew up, like, oh my gosh, like I was seeing the guy that was seeing everybody. Like the Olympians would come and train and see him. Like that was the guy.
So like I'm deep into that type of stuff. So I have rheumatoid arthritis, and I love, like, there's nothing more that I love than going to a chiropractor or getting a massage and stuff like that. So, I mean, I love watching the videos of just people getting cracked up and just readjusted and just like how good they feel after. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do, honestly. So like, it's like I have so much respect for those guys, especially for what they do for just athletes in general, to just like keep them going and keep them healthy.
Yeah, and he was doing like shockwave therapy on, like, I have a Haglund's deformity. I finally got surgery on. Thank you, Dr. McKenna. Took care of me this past year, and I finally got that done. But like, you know, it's just like that was the place they were all going. So there's, you know, those pro groups, it's like what track could they get on? So it's like crazy. You would see some pro groups, like they're getting on high school tracks, right? Like where are they traveling to train? And so, but you know, some of our running companies have like gotten back and supported those groups, right? Having like a Reebok group or having the group On, you know, like, so there's the brands, and they've, you know, I think Under Armour had like, you know, they were paying coaches and had a group, right? And so, and New Balance has been great for our sport. So, you know.
When I even know some of the bigger shoe brands like On Cloud, Asics,
Hoka. Yeah. I mean, and Adidas is like, so we're an Adidas school, right? It's like Adidas and Nike are like the world brands. And so when you look at it, it's like there's not an Adidas group, right? It's more that those are some of the best professionals in the world are getting sponsored by them. Same with Nike. There's been some Nike groups in the U.S. because obviously Nike is an American company, right? And they've had different groups out of, you know, Oregon that they've set up with, like they're paying the coaches, right? They have the facilities and all that
that's
going
why,
on.
That's why Oregon, they got like custom uniforms every single year from Nike, huh?
That's Nike. Oh yeah, it's Nike U, right?
Yeah,
It's also Track Town USA. Pop quiz, do you know where Cross Country Town USA is?
Really?
Do you know where it is?
Oh, no.
Terre Haute, Indiana. So that's Cross Country Town USA. They host our national meet all the time. And that was something we discussed on our executive call this past week of, you think of Omaha every year for baseball.
Right.
Our national championship currently moves around, which on one side, you're like, well, it's great if people are building more courses, right? I look at like A&M spent millions of dollars to build this beautiful Dale Watts cross country course. I think that's great for our sport.
Right.
Tallahassee, Florida State, with the ARP, their park association partner with Coach Brayman. It's 20 years in the making that they're going to actually host the World Championships in cross country this coming year. So World Cross is coming to the U.S., which is crazy. It's going to Tallahassee, Florida.
So, I mean, obviously big things are happening for the sport right now.
So it's like, that's exciting. And it's like just people knowing that, right? And that like those best athletes in the world are going to come in and race at the ARB. And so it's like, well, it's hard to then say, should we always be going to Terre Haute, right? When I was in college, we alternated with Louisville, which is the Louisville Slugger here, and with going to Terre Haute. And so in some ways you're like, well, my college coaches would say square donuts or bust because there was a square donut shop in Terre Haute, Indiana. And so you have that kind of like that Omaha, like, oh, we're all the pilgrimage of going there. So I don't know, to you, like, is it better it rotates, right? Or is it better we have the same place? And so I think that's what's interesting, our sport kind of debating some of those choices we make.
Yeah, no, because it actually is an interesting dynamic because it's like, do you switch it up? Because like, I'm thinking of the two scenarios I'm thinking of right now is the one that you brought up, Omaha, how that's the designated place for LSU, right? Or not LSU, but for college baseball.
But for LSU, like the
It
fans
is,
think, I want to go to Omaha, right? Like every year those fans want to go.
Yeah, I know. It's every year you have that bar or Rocco's or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, it don't even matter if LSU's going or not. Like they have a spot on the board for them because they want like they pretty much, I guess that's their like praying for them of, hey, LSU, please come here this year, Because it's like the fans are just die hard compared to anywhere else, especially around here. Especially with any college you go to around here. Not even speaking about LSU. If you come to the Nicholls and you're a Nicholls fan, you're a diehard Nicholls fan. It's that's just I guess the mentality around here.
No, I think that you bring up so many points, and like our executive call this week went on a tangent from the House settlement, right? We were talking as a group about the House settlement, impacts for our sport. Obviously, it started on like a sadder tone because, some coaches lost their jobs this week. We talked about with track and field teams kind of choosing to specialize, which has always been done with scholarship dollars because there's not enough to go around, right? The men's was funded at, fully funded program had 12.6 scholarships.
Well, do you have to share that with people?
So if your school fully funds men's track and field, before the House settlement, you had 12.6 scholarships to break up, which baseball is 11.7, right?
Okay.
And then women's track and field had 18, right? And you could break it up however you want, right? Now, we talked about baseball had the rule of like you have to minimum give 25% and you have a roster limit, which track and field, I had a friend that used to sign people for like $1 to go to UT, right? Like, so it's like, you could be on anything from $1 to, a full, right? But still, like 12.6, when you think about how many events there are for a track and field team, there's not enough to go around, right? That's not like a basketball team having 12, there's 5 guys on the court at once, right? And so, you always had to see people like specialize, right? And then every school's, if you're giving out partials, like going to Syracuse where I ran, right? Like getting you to 50% still costs way more than going to LSU, right? And so, you had to specialize. The private schools were already doing that. And obviously there was discrepancy with like how much academic money does your state university give, right? So there were some schools in the SEC that, their academic packages were crazy what you could get at some point.
Compared to some of the other schools.
Yeah, like recruiting in Texas, I would hear that, at Arkansas, a girl could get 75% academic. So out of pocket, maybe she's paying $5,000 or $6,000. UT Austin, I think the most recent billboard I saw, they were 8th public university in the country, but at one point they were 4th, right? So it's like, well, how much academic money are they giving out?
Right.
They're not giving out very much academic money if they're that high ranked in the country. And so it's just, there's always been that difference in our sport, right? And so there's always been the ability to create depth on your roster with less money, right? And so it is interesting how with the House settlement, like who's going to fund those athletic scholarships? You could still use the academic money and stuff. It'll be very interesting how it all shakes out. Who will be the big contenders at the national championship in track and field and kind of what we'll see. But yeah, unfortunately, we saw some people say we're just not going to do this event group anymore nationally this week, and from some pretty big schools to just say we're just not going to do that. We're going to put our money over here and see, how that shakes out at the national championship for us.
I'm actually kind of interested to see how that plays out.
It's not going to go well for them at the conference championship. And I think that's something we talked about with our sport. It's so different, like the conference tournament, right? The conference championship versus the national championship and like how many points you need to score to win one, right? So a lot of conference titles, you might see someone score well over 100, and, our conference, you'll see someone score 150 points to win. Like, you got a lot of bodies or have a couple that are really good to go get that many points. But then, the national championship, you ever seen New Mexico men, 3 guys, they come out 5th in the nation. If their steeplechaser could have run a little bit better, they could have been 4th in the nation with 3 people. And so it's just different, right? It's interesting. And some conferences you can win. I know Syracuse men won an indoor track title in the ACC one year, only scoring 70-something points, which is crazy. And they were able to do that because the ACC, all the teams were so good, the points spread out.
Gotcha.
And so then you see in some other conferences, that if it's some of the private schools just don't have the bodies because their scholarship dollars aren't going as far maybe. And so you saw, in the Big 12, normally it was a big state school that was always winning, right? And that's because I would think they had that depth with some of the walk-ons they could get or academic kids they were getting that could develop and do well. And, our sport's all about development, right? And that's one of the things we talk about, having the international talent. Like, some of our American runners have become so great, and the reason we're so good on the world stage as a U.S. team is because of the level of competition and the development system we have in the NCAA, right? So it's just us as coaches figure out how do we remind everyone that, like, the NCAA track and field is the Olympics.
Yeah, so, like,
we are the development team of the Olympics.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, like, are y'all, like, utilizing, like, equipment and different things, like, as far as, like, track bands and stuff like that, just to see how, like, y'all guys are running or how y'all people are throwing or releasing the ball? Because, like, that's another thing we talked about with the baseball coach was that they utilize those type of things. So I'm just wondering, do y'all have, like, access to those advanced machines to try to, like, help y'all guys to figure out, hey, this is what you're doing wrong here. Let's try to, like, maybe adjust your footing or how you're going to stride your next shot, right? Do you have those things?
So I think every school is going to be like what technology they have access to, right? That comes back to budgets. Right. And then I think sometimes in our sport, like the old school coaching of it, watching film of yourself, your coach watching you doing certain drills, like some of that's you're going to have the same success without needing fancy gadgets to do it. But obviously some of that stuff is really great. There's now like pace lights in our sport, which is crazy, where they can have like the inside rail can have like a pace light on it. So you think about our sport's always had rabbits, right? Where another human is going to run in front of you at a set pace. But there are some meets now where they'll run with these pace lights. And so it's like you're seeing the pace like right there next to you. And so that's technology in our sport, that's one of our big things where we go back and forth on, like, shoes is a huge thing in our sport right now with what shoes were banned.
Well, I mean, I know they have they have their shoes. Where was it in the inside of the sole? How they like had that technology where
the carbon plates,
yeah, so, where like it springs you further or faster and stuff.
Oh, that was a big thing in January. World Athletics came out with a list of like what shoes were banned on the track, and so a bunch of road racers, even trainers. So, like for us as an Adidas school, like the Boston is like it's a training shoe. No one's racing in the Boston, but it was on the banned list for indoor track. Really? So, and there was a big thing with the on-cloud spikes. You couldn't wear them; they weren't legal, and that got brought up for like the Big 12 championship, like. We had to, and at the Southland, it was at every conference meet, but basically with World Athletics switching to this ranking to qualify for like the World Championships and the Olympics. So there's like an A standard you can get, but then they switched to having this ranking system, right? And so then you need to be competing at these meets that are labeled by World Athletics. So then all of our college meets, the meet directors are the coaches, right? We had to put in paperwork. You have to put in paperwork. I say I don't host a track and field meet, so we don't do it for cross, but in track and field, especially for conference championships and national meet, they need to follow the World Athletics guidelines to count towards this ranking system. So it's really important that you're following the rules. And the shoes was a big thing. And so it was something that we felt like our athletes weren't aware of in time. And it was like, it really hit the NCAA system hard based on the timing. Like January for the rest of the world in track and field, like Australia's competing, but like everyone else, the track season's this summer, right? Like the pro season's just getting started in track and field. So they had plenty of time to prepare. And for our athletes, it felt like, oh, wait, what do you mean? Like I bought these, I can't wear them? And, there's a girl that got DQ'd in the Southland. She made the mile final and she got DQ'd because of her shoes, right? And so it's like, I want the best people competing in our final, right? And
I'd have been one of those guys like, all right, let's race again. I'm going to take off the shoes.
No, and I would, and that's where it's like, but it comes back to coaches. Like our head coaching chat, I was the one outdoor that was like, can we tell people if they have the wrong shoes on at the start and give kids a chance to go change their shoes? Like, come
I know,
on.
what's
Like,
up with that? They wouldn't even let them do that?
the girl got DQ'd after.
No, but, no, I'm saying like they didn't let her.
In our sport, there were coaches taking pictures to get her DQ'd after.
Oh my God.
Right? So
That just shows you. Dude, oh my God. That just is so crazy you say that because I haven't been like involved in like the sports world in so long just because now like I'm a entrepreneur businessman and I kind of dropped that. Like once I was like early in college, I started just getting into the gym and that's my thing now. I work out and do things like that. I'm self-health guy now. But whenever I was younger and just the things that other parents and other coaches, just those type of things, like just the pettiness. And it's just like, for what? You're trying to ruin this girl's chance to be something because what, you're scared that she might be your kid?
Senior year, girl didn't get to run her senior year final.
Yeah, like so what, you scared that she might be your kid or something? Or why are y'all trying to take that away from, these are kids that we're talking about right here. And young adults, right?
Yeah.
Young adults. But at the end of the day, this is their livelihood that we're talking about. And y'all trying to get them disqualified over some shoes?
But then that's the thing. But then like for the Big 12 meet, like that really matters that meet keeps its World Athletics like that it's sanctified. So it's like, so then you got to enforce the rule. So it's like, okay, when you enforce it on the front end, because if you're running in illegal shoes, like then the meet could get thrown out, and then that could really hurt some kids that need those meets to count for their World Athletics standing.
Enforce it on the front end. Don't have that pettiness of, hey, let's catch Lucy off North Carolina because she got these. Like, come on, man. If I caught somebody taking pictures of my shoes or something, I'm going to grab that phone. I'm throwing it in the water.
Yeah.
Like, don't take no pictures of my shoes. If you got something that you need to tell me and I'm running the wrong shoes, report it right now. So I'll take these shoes off and race your teammate without my shoes.
Well, and that's what you say. You talk about our sport, like kind of shooting itself in the foot sometimes that like, you know, how many times have I been watching the national championship broadcast and there's a delay because they're protesting the 4x4. And sometimes they're not even protesting the 4x4 because the two teams that are in the hunt to win, they had an issue. It's that they want to get somebody else DQ'd because it changes the points. And so this year, South Florida won the men's 4x4 title, and they had a little bit of interference on the third leg. Well, if you DQ South Florida, it changes the outcome of the national championship. And so it's kind of crazy. And you go back, like our sport is kind of crazy like that. We're like, it's not two coaches going head to head at once. So you see in football, you know, we're of course going to like appeal the call. And so I think that sometimes your brain's working that way. It's like, you know, if you saw someone breaking the rules, you're going to say something during the game, right? Or we talked about you're going to fight so hard you might get ejected from the game, right? And I think what's crazy about track and field and cross country is that like we're having so many matchups all at once. And so that's where our sport's weird. And like, how do we like
control that, regulate
fix that or control it? And then it's like, I remember one year at convention it got shut down, but we had someone saying like we should be able to protest a race that we had someone in the preliminary round of that event, but they're not in the final round. So there's, you know, 8 relay teams running. But if you ran a relay at the preliminary round 2 weeks ago, could you file a protest in that race? And you say, well, why? Your kids aren't in that race. But it's like the idea that the points shake out different for the national championship. And so that's, you know, things you can't understand.
Do y'all restructure the point system? Like,
so then you would, like, well, someone gets DQ'd, the points get allocated out different. So if South Florida gets DQ'd, everyone slides up and gets more points. And it would have changed the outcome of the men's national championship. And so it's just a crazy time in our sport and in college athletics. And like, you know, you look at like, I always talk about the spirit of the rule. I'm a big spirit of the rule kind of person. But then also like, I'm at a place right now when we talked about NIL, like, you know, for better or for worse, like, I'm not worried about NIL. And that's what I told, you know, my friends that are at these bigger schools. Like, you know, right now, like, I'm at a program where it's a lot about just development. It's about giving local kids an opportunity. We have some internationals on our team, but like, you know, we're getting kids on combo academic athletic aid and like bringing in kids on small scholarships or walking on and developing them. And in some ways, I'm kind of happy I get to ride out this crazy time at a place where like, I'm not worried about that, right? Yeah. Our basketball coach is worried about it, right? And I think our basketball staff's really smart and knows how to be successful at Nicholls, and they support their guys if they go and get paid elsewhere afterwards and say thank you, you know, and find the next guy that wants an opportunity. And I think, you know, Tavon Sadler is doing amazing things for our program, and those guys are growing and you know, winning for us as Colonels. And if they get a big deal, like, we're kind of accepting that and supporting the next crew that comes in and just as much as I'm a big baseball fan with my daughters, like we're big basketball fans too, because I went to Syracuse, right? And so you're going to find us sitting like right behind the bench and cheering. And
that's what I noticed about all the coaches too that come on and that speak on the podcast is that y'all like obviously y'all have competition level to y'all want to win, y'all have that in y'all, right? But at the end of the day, every single person that came on here so far, including you, at the end of the day, it's about the kids and growing them into be young adults and getting them ready for the next stage of life.
Yeah, and I mean, and my coach at Syracuse, Coach Fox was my head coach, and then Coach Bell recruited me, and he's now the head coach at Syracuse. And he always talked about, like, I'm happy I don't have a bonus structure that's dependent on wins. Like, it makes me make good choices about people. And so it's like, I think that's something, I don't know if that's changed, but I remember him telling me that at one point when you talk about, like, certain contracts, whether you have a bonus and all those things. And he's like, at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to run a kid that's injured. Like, hopefully I don't make that choice, right? But it's like when you're incentivized to win, are you making the best choices, right? Like that are in the best long-term health. And our sport is so long-term health, right? You talk about, the U.S. tradition in distance running or, all of our events at the world stage. Like we talked about NCAA is developing the Olympic talent and our American talent. I mean, the U.S. normally wins, right? At the Olympics, we win in track and field. And so you want coaches that are incentivized to like make long-term development choices, right? And maybe forego the short-term success for people that are going to end up being our Olympians in our sport. And we're not just participating at the Olympics as a U.S. team, we're winning, right? And so I think that's something I try to carry with me, right? That you're trying to make those long-term decisions for people too. So
that's awesome. So I probably have like one or two more questions for you. One of them would be, how long have you been at Nicholls so far? And how long you plan on staying a while? You like it here or what?
Yeah, I love living in South Louisiana. I think it's really funny. Like my parents are from Boston, like I said, and then like I'm so involved in the coach association. I have friends like all over the country, and like some of them like you would think would be the worst thing ever to live in South Louisiana to them. Like they just can't even process it. And I'm like, no, like this is a place that I love being as a mom, right? I think I love being with an administration that supports me as a whole person, right? I could be part of like the Nicholls Leadership Academy last year. That was really neat with like other professors, people on campus that our HR department ran a leadership academy, and Dr. Clune like knows my kids' names, right? Our university president, like we're people to him. We're part of his family, right? Our community, and like just having that support, I think I love that, right? And it really grounds me, and like I think this is like the perfect place for me to raise my kids and like to grow as a mom and a coach. And I think we sometimes talk about in our sport that like it's not that great of quality of life for coaches, right? Like the schedules, the travel, like we're not supporting coaches being maybe good parents, right? And so I think I'm lucky to be in a place where like that is important, right? As a department, that's important. And yeah, I appreciate that, right? And I think that that's kind of what I focus on. And obviously like it would be great to have more money, right? Obviously, like we know if we had more money, we'd be better.
Like, it's that Southern hospitality deal, though. It's just like, I know it always, the money's not always there, the greatest thing, right? But it's almost like, hey, we're all family. No matter what, we're going to take care of each other.
Yeah, and so I've been here 8 years, right? And so, there's just been some great head coaches, like I said, like on our team, right? And I think, when JT became athletic director, like I already knew him from him leading like our Huddle Up Booster Club for football, right? And so that's something that like when I came, like I immediately like dove into just like embracing my school, right? Like, so people think like how many people now like they think I ran at Nicholls, and I'm just like, so it's like I think I'm doing a good job of like really being all in on Nicholls that people like don't know, and I'm like, have you heard me talk? I'm not from here, right? Like I'm from the Northeast. I ran at Syracuse, right? But I think, that's just something that I think is great.
Whenever I was producing your name, it was hard for me because it's just like a different, I don't know. I have that Cajun accent in me. I feel like I can't even do it right.
Yeah, no, I love going to like parades and events and people are like, you're not from here. Like I'll say 2 words and people can immediately tell, but people are so willing to help you. And like, sometimes I think it's great that it's like obvious I'm not from here. People are like, oh, let me help you, right? But no, I think I'll be here, probably till my daughters graduate from high school at least. And we'll see from there. I think, I'm getting to, like, you can define success how you want to, right? And so I think Matt Rohn, who was the athletic director that hired me, who's now at James Madison, and, JT, I think, talks to him and learned a lot from him before he became an athletic director. It's like, Matt and I would talk about, like, how do we define success? And those are the same conversations that JT and I have, right, with our program. Like, you're not saying you're not trying to win, right? But we know that we're at a disadvantage, right? In our sport, I always talk about, like, I could name the programs in the Southland that like they're up here at the start line and like then there's a trickle down start line and we're back here. We're trying to make up. We're starting at a disadvantage, right? And so how do we close that gap? And yeah, we're trying to still win, but also winning can be defined as, is every athlete on my team setting a personal best? Is, every athlete on our team getting what they came for, right? And so we always talk about like we want athletes that Nicholls makes sense to them for multiple reasons.
Right.
I don't know if I bragged about Lucas Feudy, who just graduated from a team who's biology student of the year. He presented on his research a bunch. He went off to Nebraska, Omaha for grad school, right? And it's like, we also had the mass comm student of the year, the French student of the year on our team. Like we're getting all academic, and it's like, that's also success, right? And so, those same athletes, Luke is graduating as one of the best, top 5 distance guys in school history at Nicholls, right? And so I think, that's kind of, I can be excited about these things. And when I was at Florida State, right, I was a volunteer coach when I got this Louisville Slugger. Coach Harvey was like, you can have this, Steph. And it's like, I worked in the Office of National Fellowships there. And Dr. Craig Filer's a dean, now at, and big academic guy. And I got to sit on like Rhodes Scholarship interviews. And I got to work with students who are applying to the Fulbright and stuff like that and edit their essays with them. And just like, how are you defining success, right? And so I think, I just think, college is a great opportunity and it has to make sense. Some people, it doesn't make sense to go to college. But I think for those that it does, it's like, I really believe in higher education.
Well, I'm glad you actually said that though and made that point because at the end of the day, a lot of people don't really understand that. And I feel like it's becoming to be a bigger thing is that college really isn't for everyone. I'm super beneficial and glad I went to college because it's just simply the connections and the people I've got to meet and talk with, and it just has become a great thing for me because now look where I'm at now. I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't have went to Nicholls State University. With that being said, if I would have went somewhere like LSU, I'd probably be in a whole different place by now. Like I probably wouldn't be doing because I wouldn't have had those close interactions, like how you're saying with the teachers and with the staff and the support people that everybody's supporting you, right? So it's just like Nicholls really does do a good job at bringing that aspect.
Oh, I tell recruits all the time that, like, I think you're getting a private school experience for the public school price, right? And that's my big sales pitch on Nicholls, right? Your faculty is going to develop you, going to care about you. If you show them you care, like, they're going to invest their time and energy in you. And we're not a PhD institution, right? Like, you're going to have the undergrads doing research, right? You're going to have the undergraduate students being involved in what our professors are doing. And that just, like you said, nurtures that development. And whether they're going on to graduate school, professional school, or just getting a job, like, you're getting nurtured through those 4 years. And so I think that's my thought is that more students, maybe that's at the high school counselor level or what we're educating parents on. It's just like, you need that growth as a young adult, but not every person's meant to go do that at a 4 institution, right? And if you don't graduate, like, what was that time? Like, right? And, or if you don't graduate with where you're going next, right? What did you we talk about, we don't want to be surviving, we want to be thriving, right? That's another little like tagline, right? Like, absolutely. I don't care about being barely eligible. I want you to, be succeeding. And so for some people, they have to work to get C's, right? Mm-hmm. But while they're working really hard to get those C's, like, what else are you doing to get yourself set up for that career you want, right? Because I'm doing you a disservice as a coach if I'm discouraging you getting involved in other things, right? Like, we talk about it being kind of like a triangle, right? That it's like we're going to have our academics, our athletics, and then everyone's social. Like, there has to be some other component. And I say the most successful people find a way to make their social thing, like, what's propelling them forward in their future career, right? Or what groups are they getting involved in? Like you said, networking can be so important, or their faith can be part of that, right? And like, are you getting leadership opportunities through that, right? Like, and getting that skill set you need, and having a busy schedule, I think, can be a good thing if it's done right. It's it's teaching you how to be an adult. Like, if you want to get married and have kids someday while having a career, while staying in some sort of physical well-being, like, you've got to be able to balance the schedule, right? And I look back at college, I thought it was so hard, and now I like laugh, right? I
literally tell my employees and everyone who works for me, does anything around me, anyone who's around me, I always give them this advice, just like you just said. Look, you think it's hard now and you think it's struggling now, wait in a year or 2 years or a few months. Watch how easy that little thing that you were freaking out and stressing out about, watch how easy it has done. And just because of you did it, now you know how to do it. And what you once thought was this make or break it thing for you, you're literally doing it and it takes you 5 or 10 minutes. And it could be either a simple task or, a huge game, whatever it may be, you know. I always imply that, like, just no matter what, you know, just do it. Just get out there and go do something.
I mean, that was like for my own personal running career. Like, I think I missed out on maybe a lot of what I could have achieved because I just like couldn't get over that like pity party for myself, or like I was distracted by other things. And like becoming a mom was the best thing for my running ever, right? If I'm going to take the time to go train, I'm going to take the time to go race. Like, I looked at like I'm missing out on time with my daughter, right? Or with now both my daughters. And so it's like it really made it in a race scenario that I wasn't going to have a pity party and feel bad for myself. I was just going to know that I maximized my effort on that day. And when that switch like clicked for me, like, I mean, I can't believe I qualified for Olympic trials in the marathon while being a full-time, you know, D1 head coach, having, you know, I had one kid at the time, and then afterwards I still went back and I paced the 10K on the track at Texas Relays and like ran my second best 10K of my life, having driven in with my, you know, I practiced that morning. We had a workout at the track. I drove into Austin with my younger daughter, Sandy, was an infant at the time, and my best friend who lived in Austin watched her while I went and paced this 10K on the track. And it's just like, college me would have thought I needed to be there 3 days early, you know, resting in my hotel, like, you know, doing all these things to perform. And it was like, no, actually, like, you know, I slept well the nights leading up to it. I'd planned everything out, and like, it just got me to perform at a higher level. And so I think as a coach now, I try to like, how do I get my athletes to have that switch click without having to be, you know, a 30-something-year-old mom, right? You know, and so I think that, you know, some other people that clicks for them in high school or college, and that's why they're so high a level.
Oh, whenever it clicked for me, whenever I realized I was like, it was in college, and I was probably making some not of the best decisions I should have been making. And what I realized was, I was like, shoot, man, like, yeah, I got my family, I got my mom, she takes care of me, I got people, I got a lot of family, right? We do well. But no one out here is going to save me at the end of the day. Like, you're the only person who's out here and really cares about you and who's going to save you is yourself. So if you don't go out there and you don't go out and put out the work and put in the effort and discipline yourself to do the things and do it consistently, then you're almost bound to fail, you know? But if you do those things and you do it consistently, it's almost impossible to fail. It's like, it's not if I'm going to succeed, it's when will I succeed.
Exactly. And that's what we talk about, like focusing on the process, right? Being process oriented is like those small little decisions you make every day. And then, yeah, you have to have those outcome goals that you want, right? But like you said, once you do that, if you're focused on the process, you're going to get to the outcome, right? And if you're putting in your whole effort, like even if you fall short of that outcome goal, like you're going to get the closest you are going to get to it, right?
Even a fail is still a win because now it's a learning experience.
Exactly. My high school coach always said it's a learning experience,
Yeah,
right? We still talk about that.
I never use the word fail. But I guess my last thing for you is this is gonna be more for the viewers. What would be like 2 or 3 things that you would say to young not college, I would say high school level athletes, because a lot of our viewers are kind of from like the 14 to about 35-year-old age group of guys and girls. What would you say to our viewers that want to compete at a college level program or want to potentially make it to Olympics one day? What would be 3 things that you would kind of tell them, like, hey, this is what you should focus on and kind of have your mind at and gear towards?
Yeah, I think there's like 2 parts to that, right? I think that my first part would be like, there's going to be an opportunity for everyone. So with these roster limits coming in, people are worried that like you're losing on opportunities. And it's like, you're losing out on a certain kind of opportunity, but there's another one that will open up, right? And so like letting yourself go where the opportunity might fit right for you, right? So this generation is going to be too young to remember Nick Symmonds, who was a famous 800-meter runner, but he ran D3 in college, right? And now, you know, he went on to be a multi-time Olympian and professional runner, right? And so it's like, you don't have to be at that SEC school to have success, right? And those roster spots are going to be limited, and you don't have to go somewhere else and then transfer to that big place to have success. Like sometimes it's finding the right setup for you and your development. There's a pole vaulter, I can't think of her name at the moment. I don't want to say the wrong name, but that she advocates the same thing, right? That she went to a smaller school. She had the right setup, and now she's one of the best in the world, right? And so I think you have to look at your value system and like what works for you, right? And so we talked about at our camp we had last week, we had our fundamentals cross country camp. And, you know, I do a bunch of different talks during that. And part of it is like realizing your own strengths and weaknesses. Like, what do you want to work on? And then seeing what program, you know, their training style, the environment you're going to be in, the coach's approach, like what's going to fit best for you. And we always emphasize fit at Nicholls, right? Like you need to go find that fit because that's where you're going to develop and you're going to do your best. And what's best for someone else might not be what actually, fuels you to be the most successful. Right. And then obviously, like we just mentioned before, that's like step 2, right? Like you got to be good enough to go find the place that you fit, right? But to get good enough, like, are you doing the little things? Are you making those decisions every day, right? In our sport, like you will not be good if you don't sleep. And we live in a world where we're all on our phones. And, we talked about it at camp, like nutrition, recovery. And like one of the biggest things, one of the girls on my team this year said, like, Coach, did you read that research study where like when you're swiping short TikTok videos and those things, like you're getting this like hit of like dopamine in your brain and you're addicted to it. And she's like, and actually like she read a study about it, like decreasing your performance like 2 days later, right? And so it's like thinking about like, okay, what am I doing? Like if I can't make the habit to never look at it, right? Like, can I make a change that the 2 nights before I compete, I'm going to read a book before I go to bed, right? And so we talked about our camp, like making things that are doable, right? Like, have you heard of like the 75 hard challenge?
Yes, absolutely.
So my least favorite thing about the 75 hard challenge is that it's not like sustainable to me.
Yeah,
right?
Well, why is it only 75 hard? Let's make the life hard challenge where you're consistently doing things every single day just for your health and for the benefit of your life. Let's live more, you know what I mean?
And I think that my thing is like make it digestible. And so like I talked about swimming before, like one of my best friends, she's the head swimming and diving coach at University of North Texas, and her husband wanted to do 75 hard, and it's working great for him. Like he needs a challenge to get fit, to be focused. And she, why I love her, she's such a great role model, is like she made it adapted to her and was like, that's fine. Like one of my workouts is going to be walking around the park while my daughter's playing at the park. Like I'm a mom, right? Like she's a first grader going to second grade, and like she has a college swim team. Every day doesn't look the same. And that's my thing is like, sure, old me, I was running twice a day all the time, right? I ran at one point in my life, I was running, 80 to 90 miles a week to be good at my sport. And that's a different world than I live in now. And I remember when I ran really fast as a mom, one of my coaching friends was like, well, how are you taking a 0 on some days? He called that an egg. And he had his reasons for physiologically, like I needed to run something that day in his head. And I said, that's just not going to fit my lifestyle now. I need a day off. And I was a 7-day-a-week girl. Like I went months on end without a break. And that just wasn't sustainable for me as a coach or as a mom. And it's like, so it's not that you don't have the goals, it's how are you setting up your goals? And just like when I write training, I don't write off of a 7-day cycle. Normally I write off of like 14 or 20 days. Like when we're writing out training, it's like, well, what am I getting in those 20 days? Like, because there's so many training zones in track, especially that we need to touch on for a distance runner, that you might not be doing a speed acceleration or speed economy workout every week, but you're touching on it within the training cycle. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I think when you apply that to like a regular person, like maybe you don't have the time every day to do a big strength workout and a big cardio workout, right? But like, how are you planning out, 2 weeks at a time, right?
So where you going with that is so I was working at the wellness center. I've been there since it's been open, right? Love the wellness center. Love everything about Thibodeau and everything that they got going on. Actually, I just dropped my membership there because now we have our own. We built a sauna steam room downstairs, ice bath, and then a full gym. And the reason that we did that was because, like how you're saying, your lifestyle changed. It wasn't fitting you. Well, I'm so busy. I'm over here. If I'm not over here, I'm either on a sales meeting, sales call, I'm on the road, wherever the case. I don't even have the time to drive 15 minutes from my house no more to the wellness center. So now we built a gym downstairs, and now we have our gym. So now we kind of like making these things fit to our life. That way we can still keep our health and that be our focus. Because at the end of the day, if you're not healthy and you don't like the way you look and you don't love your body, then it's almost like how are you supposed to love and everything else that you're doing? And how are you supposed to take care of everything else that you want to do in life? You know what I mean? That's why I try to tell my employees, like, if you don't take care of yourself, how do I expect that you're going to take care of something for me?
No, and I think that's a big thing that's missing. That's kind of where I talked about like that quality of life or like life balance. Sometimes we talk about as college coaches that like we want our athletes to have that, and then it's like sometimes we forget to have it for ourselves. And I don't always practice yoga, but I went for the third year in a row to the Juneteenth yoga that was at MLK Park in Thibodeau. And the last 2 years, Brandy C. Adams has been the yoga instructor there. And I just finished her book, Root and Flame. So shout out to Brandy. I think her mantra really stuck with me that day. And part of it was about like your self-care. And then also, I'm going to say 2 lines of it. I'm going to steal it from Brandy. But I loved that it said, I'm the root and the flower. I'm not abandoned, I'm choosing. And so it's like the idea that like, you're like we talked about like the process underneath, right? Like the roots, like you're the one putting in all this work to then like produce this flower, right? Like that's like showing the world what you're doing, right? And then also like the choosing really resonates for our sport, right? Because sometimes I think you can look at it that like, oh, I'm doing this, and I don't have the support, I don't have that, right? Or like as college athletics, like if they're not funding your program the same as they're funding another sport, like you can't sit around and feel abandoned. Like you got to look and say, I'm choosing this, right? And so every day I always say, I get to be a Division I head track and field coach. And I might not get paid as much as some of my peers. I might not have all the resources my peers have, but like, look at what I get to do every day. And so when we talk about that simple verbiage in your mind of like choosing.
Quality of life.
And I told Brandy, I love that. I said, I'm going to keep using this like all year. It's like when she said it at yoga, it was just like, man, that really resonated with me. And it's just because always in our sport, like I'll have to say, oh, I have to do this. I'm like, no one is making you be here, right? No one made you come run here. No one made you this. And like, so when you said, what do you tell young people? You're choosing. So go find that opportunity that fit for you. And when you get there, remind yourself that like, this is what you chose. And now if it's not serving you, if it turns out totally different, it doesn't fit your needs, that's okay to reassess and then go choose something else. But remember when you get yourself there that you chose that.
Right.
And if that coach is a little harder on you than you thought, well, maybe you just take a step back and you go, well, why are they having the success they're having?
And you say that, and I'm laughing right now, and because I'm just thinking, like, with me just recently in life, we got so much going on right now. Like, we have probably 17 different companies that we're doing things for, like marketing wise. Then we have clients that we have from our Alpha. So I'm basically running 3 companies, and that was literally a conversation that we had to have with a couple of my employees and just a few of my people like for the past few days is, am I biting off too much more than what I can chew right now? But then at the end of the day, I turn around and I say, you know what? I am not the common denominator. I am that single one that's like, I'm a savage. I'm a monster. I don't care. I'm going to put it on my plate. You got a plate that you're eating? I'm eating the whole table. We was talking, me and my buddy Kobe, like how the flower, it resonated with me just now because he was like, he's actually another guy on our podcast, whatever. So he was just been struggling a little bit recently because I've been pushing him and putting a lot of pressure on him to do more things because I see how much potential the kid has. I mean, he's got 200,000 followers on TikTok, 200,000 followers on YouTube. He's getting millions of views on each one of his videos, and he did it, and he's shown a proven success over this short amount of time. Well, he's over here and he's saying, you know, Nick, like, I got this, and I want to flower these flowers instead of putting my energy into these other flowers that you're trying to put me into and all. And I had to come to that realization of like, yeah, Kobe, I understand, man. Like, you got these flowers and all, but I'll tell you something. This is where me and you are different. You want to water these 2 or 3 flowers? Well, you got flowers, my dude. I got whole rose gardens. You might as well say I got 3 lines of rose gardens because I ain't just got 3 flowers. I got so many things just every single where. So just like at the same time, it's like it's good to keep yourself busy, but then with going with that is also be self-aware and know if you're biting off too much at one time, right?
And to go back to that metaphor that she gives us, like, what's your root system, right? And is your root system, I'd assume it's not just you, right? And so it's like you're taking care of yourself, you're making connections. So to have the root system support like all your rose gardens, if we're going with that, like you're not trying to do each single flower by yourself, right? Like, and so I think that it's one of those things that can go so many ways. Maybe we're misinterpreting what Brandy meant by it, but when I read her book, I just like love that it's this idea that like it's not going to be perfect, and the character in her book is like life is hard, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And it doesn't become all, you know, sunshine at the end of the book. It's just like, but it's a really great like self-reflective piece where you're looking at like the choices you make every day and keep showing up for yourself and give yourself grace. I think we talk about that as our team, like, you know, that like it's gonna be hard, but like, do you give yourself grace? Do you like find a new way to do it? Do you find a support system? Like,
so it is,
you know,
it is hard though, like you're saying though, because like every single day, I'm the type of guy I wake up, I am a multimillionaire, I am successful, I am reaching all my goals, I am doing everything in life that I want to do. I'm completely reiterating those things and telling myself that every single day. But then at the end of the day, I'm just looking at myself and I'm like, man, I'm still hungry. I want more. What more can I do? I still want it. And it's just like, I don't know if that's just a drive that is just, it's a good and a bad thing because also it keeps me up. Like I was up till 4:30 last night, you know, looking on cameras and making sure everything was good with the studio. So it's just like,
you got a track and field mentality. You see your sport a lot. People get quoted like, how does it feel? And it's like, no, I want to do better.
Yeah.
Right. I can jump further. You know, I can throw farther. I can go run even faster, right? And so I think that's exciting. And maybe you got that mentality starting out young in our sport, right? It's like, how can you be the better version of yourself, right?
And that's what we try to do every single day.
Yeah.
And I think that's how everybody needs to be, honestly. If we saw more of that in this world today, I think it would be in a different place.
You know, you're happy, but you're never satisfied, right? I think that's the thing where you can be grateful for what you have, but still want to do even better. And if it's coming from a place, I think too, of like that success of like, I just want to see what I can do and see how many people I can impact and what I can grow. Like that's what's going to keep you for the long run.
I liked how you said, give yourself grace, because that's like one thing that I do not do for myself. Like it's very hard for me to sit back and it's just like, man, like look at everything we built. Look at everything we got going on. But I never do that for myself. I never go out and like just say, you know what, we did all, I every now and again, right? But it's just like, we should celebrate a lot more because we always hit new milestones and we always doing that. And I never take the time to sit back and say, hey, good job, guys. Like, look at where we at. Like, and so I like how you said that. Give yourself that grace. And
yeah, and I preach that to my athletes. You know, we had a girl that she had a rough freshman year. Like, it wasn't what we wanted, right? And like, but it's like, well, look at the hard lessons she learned. And I said, like, if you've learned these lessons, right, and like you know what you want to change to do better next year, like, then just give yourself some grace, right? Like, if you didn't end up running the personal best you wanted to this year, we fell short, but you know why? And you've done those hard, like, internal looks, right? Those hard conversations with yourself, and like, you have a plan too, right? You went from, I'm disappointed in myself. Why? What could I have done differently? And here's my plan. Like, then give yourself some grace. Like, sometimes it takes time, and our sport is definitely a sport that takes time, and it's also not like, is the word like linear, where you're like, it's not going to be like, boom, I just get to the point. Like, and sometimes it's helpful to point out like some of these athletes that like, man, I mean, one of the things we did at our camp, we watched some race strategy videos. We watched different races, and I talk about different race strategies. And we watched the great Graham Blanks from Harvard run really fast indoor on the 5K, and he laps the BYU runner who won nationals in the steeplechase this year, and also is an Olympian. But at that same race, you know, a year or so ago, he was getting lapped. Right? And so I was like, there's no way that runner went into the race. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but like, there's no way he went into the race being like, I think I'm gonna get lapped by Graham Blanks today. You know? Like, but that's the meet that a lot of them go and try to run fast on the track after cross country nationals. And we said, sometimes it goes great, sometimes it doesn't. And like, you don't sit back and like, that kid didn't go like, oh man, my coach was wrong. You know, Ed Einstein doesn't know what he's talking about. My training's all off. Like, no, I'm sure he just, you know, looked at it. What did I get out of the day? And it wasn't what I wanted, or it was fine. And like, how did he build from that moment? Because it's not all gonna go perfectly.
Right.
And he's the one that just ran like the fastest time, like 47 years in NCAA track meet. And part of it was all the international guys there that were pushing him. People were running faster than ever in the steeplechase at the national championship. And so, and I think that's where you talk about like our sport. It's so much that's out there to offer, and it's just how do we package it to get the fandom that, you know, Omaha has going on right now.
Right.
So
there's one more thing before we close off, because I know we come into that time, but this is completely like off topic, and probably not even, it's not off topic, it has everything to do with what we got going on right now. But I just want to know from your standpoint, so like whenever you have all these people, like you mentioned Usain Bolt earlier, do you think that some of these guys are just so fast and so good at what they do because they come in from a primal instinct from whenever they were kids, like running with these deers and these, you know what I'm talking about? Like, no, because they do that. I watch videos of it. Like, they run with the deer and they like just steady go and go and go. And then the deer stops and the deer needs a break, but then you just see Usain Bolt just keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. So it's like, do you think like training in those type of aspects and maybe not having all of the access to things like we have here in modern America is kind of might be some of the things that make some of those people from those other countries as great as they are?
I mean, I think it's the things where you talk about like, you know, you're going to have natural given talent, right? Like genetics are a thing, right? There's a reason we see like so many East Africans, there's some great distance runners, like growing up at altitude is an advantage, right? We see them also in the US from, you know, Utah or from Colorado, right? Like your environment can definitely influence like the genetic makeup you have to start, right?
So the people in Colorado and all in the higher altitude states, they end up performing better whenever they come into low because of their...
Yeah, and I mean, there's also like how long's your ancestry been there? Like, there's all sorts of scientific you can look at and like, you know, what were you born with, right? So this is where you talk about like, you know, like Prefontaine, who's the famous Nike runner, right? You see all the images. He died really young, right, in a car accident. But you know, like people argue that he had like a different like genetic ability based on his like lung capacity starting out, right? And so it's just like, you talk about like Michael Phelps for
I
the
was about to
swimming,
say,
right?
yeah,
Like
the
certain
length.
genetic vision, but obviously Michael Phelps trained really hard. Prefontaine trained really hard, right? And so, so I think that, I'm a big Tour de France fan. I don't know if you watch the Tour de France.
I don't watch it or nothing, but I know a lot about it.
And then, I mean, there's so much interesting things to read about, like, the issues they've had with doping and all that kind of stuff and like peak performance. But at the end of the day, like, I'm one of those people that goes, well, would it have still been those same guys there? Right? When they had so much going on with the whole Lance Armstrong. And I love Tyler Hamilton's book. If you ever read a book about cycling, I just gave it to one of my friends to read. But just like, but still, like, the level they're performing at, like, they're like what they started out with is like, yeah, some of them work really hard, but like, where do they start out from? And so I think it's one of those things where you talk about like nurture versus nature, right? We can go down a whole psychology debate. Like, I think that your environment makes a difference. And that's where I said, like, maybe for me, the environment I needed was to have to run for something bigger than myself. I had to have a kid. I had a natural birth for both my daughters. So I argue that made my pain tolerance grow up. And so you talk about a sport where, like, how long can you be redlining and uncomfortable and manage pain? Like, I thought I was ready to go for giving birth because I'd done a marathon. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is nothing like a marathon, right? It's like a different world. And I think it made running at a high level so much easier. And then for me, it was also like, I have my kids. So you think about like some of these international athletes that are coming over, like they're going to miss their family for years, right? Like they're running for something so much bigger than themselves, right?
Even for their countries or something.
Yeah, like, and I think, it's like, but then there's also people like, like Steph Curry that can grow up with a great family support system and still become great at their game, right? Great at their sport.
I
And
think
so,
he's like just like some type of freak. He's a robot. He got to be.
but I think
like,
he put in the work and he
No,
had
he definitely,
access to a lot of resources. So
Yeah.
it's like, so that's the thing too, when you give access to resources, like how do you grow that mental state, right? Michael Phelps, there's stories of his coach like smashing his goggles and then being like, go have fun during this set. Like, so it's like his coach was trying to create an environment that wasn't always easy, right? Even though the training load was huge he was doing, like, how does he deal with adversity, right? And so I'm not saying parents should be like setting up adversity for their kids. Like, no way, Jose.
Don't go quirky kids baseball bat or nothing, and then you start hitting some line drives to them at shortstop. Don't do nothing like that or nothing.
But no, it's like, but it's also like, teaching responsibility though of like, do you know where your baseball equipment is?
Right.
Like you can teach some ownership or like, like having them be able to pack like their own stuff for like my daughters pack their own soccer bags. Like we get out all their cheer stuff together. Like, what do you need? Now my daughters have started doing some like little road races for fun. They like it. And it's like, okay, well, what hurts your tummy that you eat? Like they gave you a side stitch or like, what do you need to like, drink? Like we made sure we hydrated because we knew we were going to go race when it was hot, right? Like you're teaching them how to prepare, right? And I think that, like you said, the original question was like, we're seeing it that certain athletes, I mean, they just thrive in the environment that they were in, right? I think they have that natural instinct to want to be great. And then if you have that mental setup as well as the like physical components that are maybe an advantage in the sport you're trying to do, like what a winning combination.
Right.
But then there's other people that like just putting in work. We talk about the college level, like being pretty talented at a high school, but if you can't have the work ethic at the college level, you're gonna get passed by a whole bunch of people that maybe weren't more talented than you in high school, but they put in the work.
Right.
And I had a bunch of girls that I was faster than in high school that became Olympians or became professional runners, right? And like they were able to just be in the environment, and not that my coaches were great, but just for me, like I just lost focus at points, right? And definitely didn't create that environment for myself until my second year of grad school. I think I ran pretty well with Coach Bell coaching me. I was at McNeese State as a grad assistant. For me, I think I need to be busier. I was a grad assistant for the track and field team. I was finishing my master's at Arizona State. I had to still take classes at McNeese. I was helping with like a remedial English class. I think I was like tutoring. I was working in the office. I was pacing the girls on the team. And then I would do my own training. And that environment, like,
Yeah, you were super busy.
it just made me, like, I thrived. I was running 90 miles a week. Like I just thrived in that environment.
You say the 90 miles a week, and so I promise this is my last question.
Yeah.
Because we are getting to that time. But have you ever thought about running like an ultra marathon or what they call it? Is that an ultra?
So ultras are so different, right? It's one of those things of like, there's some ultra runners that are doing it at a really high level and they're running pretty fast the whole time. Sometimes they're on trails, right? So it's like ultra, you go into like, are you gonna be on a track, a road? There's like, ultra is like a whole other sport. So it's kind of like when we talked about like the example of Bryce Hoppel running the 800 and, such a high level of their summer after racing 8K. Like when you're talking about 8K cross is so different from 800 on the track. Like for me, like the road marathon is even so different. from
in the
ultras.
grass, or you saying a road marathon? I was thinking
Like
something about like road between grass.
like so the idea like even the surface, but like trail racing is like a whole other animal where like sometimes like in ultras like you don't even have like a map of like where exactly you're going. It's like, oh, make sure you make this loop right. And like you'll hear them talk about so Allie Ostrander is a name you should look up. She's doing great. She's also a big YouTuber for like the running world and stuff. And so she amazing high school athlete from Alaska, went to Boise State and won a national title in the steeplechase. And she's a great like track steeplechaser all the way to like being on the roads for the mile to like then doing these like trail races, mountain races, and like she grew up doing it, but she'll run all over the like the range, right? And so I think she probably would have a better answer for you. Like for me, it's like I'm just like I just can't fathom getting on the trail and not knowing where I'm going,
and how long or
and they like eat so much the whole time too, and like they are running a pretty impressive pace, and they're dealing with the terrain. I also am not a great trail runner also because like my Haglund's deformity that I had surgery on. So like my heel bone has like grown out and aggravated my Achilles. And so the one foot I had surgery on, they like shaved my heel bone down, reattached my Achilles. But now my Haglund's on my other foot is starting to annoy me, which never annoyed me. So I think for me, I just probably wouldn't be a trail runner. And a lot of ultras are on the trails. I also think because of my Haglund's, I probably wouldn't become an ultra runner because you're running so much. So I'm currently in a phase where I'm like trying to get myself back into running because I'm like, I don't know, over a year, 4 months post-op, so I should be running. And so I'm going to try to run like 2 or 3 times a week, build those up. I'm signed up for a half marathon in October for fun with my assistant coach, Dustin, and then Elena, who just graduated from our team. And then one of our girls is redshirting, so she's going to run that half. And so trying to motivate myself to see if I can give it a go in the marathon again. But I'll be coming at it from more of like a cross-training approach. I do a lot more weightlifting now. So that'll be interesting. I normally don't focus on weight, but I weigh a lot more than when I ran fast. So it'll be interesting, like, because now what I do in the weight room. So it'll be interesting. Yeah. So I'm interested for that experience, but I don't think ultras are in my life plan.
Yeah, no. I just want to know. Because
I look at it as a whole different sport, right? Yeah. It's a whole, when you talk about those people that will go run 12 hours, like
I'm just
all day, there's no stopping point.
I'm just thinking of 100, 150 miles, 200 miles, 250 miles. Me thinking about driving in a car for that long. I don't even want to go in a car.
Yeah, I'm a road trip queen, but like I'm just like I don't think I want to like do that kind of running. But let's reset, our sport is like so many sports in one, right?
And like I have a buddy, and I'm actually gonna tell him to watch this. Shout out Reed. He's big into running. He's actually from Berwick, and we have people like that would whenever he was younger. They would see him at like 9:00 in the morning, like at one part of town or whatever. And it would be 5:00 in the afternoon, and he would still be running at a whole different section of town, like across town or whatever. And I'm gonna definitely tell him to just watch this episode and tell me what he thinks about it and how it went, because I would like to know what he thinks.
Yeah, ultra running's crazy, and it's a whole other animal. You see some people shift over there, but like it's a different sport than track and field or even like shorter road races, right? It's just So.
Actually, his girlfriend too. She actually ran for LSU. I'm trying to think of her. I know her. I'm sorry, Reed, and I can't even think of her name right now. I'm just completely drawing a blank. But she actually ran for LSU for a while, and she worked for, I believe it was ASICS for a little while, and now they moved up to Milwaukee and stuff. So he got a job up there, and I think she's doing something too. But like she kind of stayed in the shoe game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely interesting stuff. So, do you have anything that you want to plug in before we sign off? Any socials that you want people to check out that's for Nicholls, or any events coming up that you want people to be aware of?
No, a big thing is you can follow us on Nicholls TFXC on Instagram, right? And then our big thing is our home cross country meet. It's going to be a big festival again, and we love to have people come out, enjoy some live Cajun music Saturday, September 27th at the Nicholls Farm. It's right past Lafourche Crossing, like right off the bayou, right? Down the bayou from Nicholls. It's a great show. And we'd love to have people come out and be a part of the day. And you can sign up and race yourself if you want to run 3,200 meters, so right around 2 miles on the grass, or have your kids sign up to run the 1K for free. It's 12 and under. And then we'll have our high school and college races. So it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm probably going to be there, so looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on
thanks
the
so much.
show. Have a great one.